December 6, 2022. This is the annual Truth and Taxation meeting. President Betker and our city manager are absent tonight. They're at a training. So we're going to get right into it, and I'm going to turn this over to our finance director, Ms. Nicole Jorgensen. Nicole.
Okay, councilors and public, everyone watching. This is what we have in place for the 2023 budget as of today. So I'll go through this as quickly as I can, and then if we have questions at the end,
We'll do
go
questions
through
at the end. So if anybody here has questions, we'll have them come up and stand at the podium and give us your questions. So.
And then just to clarify, there's no decisions being made tonight. It's just information for the public, and then for the councilors to hear any public comment as well. The budget will be approved at the next council meeting. So looking at the process that we go through, it's not a short process. As department heads, we start this in May. We start looking at the numbers that we've got year to date and what we're thinking about for the upcoming year. So we spend most of the year going through this, and then we start reviewing it, what they've got together in July and August. We hold some work sessions with the council throughout the fall. The prelim is set in September, and then we did actually have an extra work session this fall in order to talk to some of the organizations that were requesting funds. The hearing tonight, and then at the next meeting on the 20th, we will approve that final levy. That initial budget was approved with a 12.49% levy increase. Since then, we have found some corrections. We've found some opportunities. With the rising interest rate, we were able to budget another $120,000 almost in interest revenue for 2023, so that helped bring the levy down. We received some information about a traffic study that could potentially be done, so we ate up some of that interest savings with the traffic study for about $70,000. There were some other miscellaneous adjustments that we made. We added about $9,800 in minor expenses, and then we also, partly due to that revenue increase from the interest, the PUC's in lieu payment that they make to us went up about $160,000. So as of right now, we brought that 12.49 levy increase down to 10.25. This is just a quick view of the revenues and where they come from. There's another slide after this too that goes through that. Gives you an idea of where some of the funds get their money from and how much we depend on property taxes and state funding, as well as the PUC and their in lieu payment. This is another view of that. It just breaks it down a little bit differently. As you can see, like I said before, property taxes are a huge revenue source for us. We're very dependent on them. They're 40% of our revenue, and then followed by state aid. Is the next largest source. So we depend heavily on the state and what they can provide to us.
Nicole, what other sources there? We see 9.3%. What might be an example of other sources?
The other includes charges for services, fines and fees, license and permits, interest, and some other miscellaneous smaller things like donations or just random little. And then if we move on to the expenditures, you can get an idea of which departments are spending the money and just kind of a high level what they're spending that money on. So personnel obviously is a huge expense for us. That's wages and benefits and everything paid to the employees. Supplies are fairly small compared to that. Other services and charges, so like when we pay for engineering or outside services or those types of things, that would be included in that. The capital outlay, those are any larger projects or purchases that are planned for the year. Debt service, we have to obviously pay back the debt that we own, so that's a portion there. And then the sinking fund, that is the expenses or the money that we set aside for future large projects to maintain the city buildings, the fire department. Herman the German is part of that now. And this breaks expenditures down a little differently by the department. Some you can see public works is 18%, so that's the streets and their maintenance. Public safety is the fire department and the police. Admin is the city administration. The rest of them are pretty self-explanatory. The community rec, the park, the library. Debt service, you can see, is a huge expense in comparison to some of the other departments. So So overall, just under $24 million in expenses for the year. This gives you an idea of where we've been with the expenses and how they compare to prior years. You can see we're not at the highest we've been in 2023. That was back in 2017 and 16 when we were buying some land or giving some land away for different items. And you can see what this is showing here is the tax capacity has also increased quite a bit over the last year. And this will have a large impact on the tax rate, depending on what we end up with for the final levy amount. But as of right now, the tax rate will be going down based on that tax capacity number. I think this is probably an interesting slide for the citizens. This kind of shows you what of your taxes, where your tax money goes each year. It breaks down, and this is all based on market or a medium value home. So as of right now, according to the numbers I received from the county, $180,000 is the median value of a home in New Ulm, up from $155,000 last year. So somebody with a moderate home in New Ulm would pay, for instance, $200 a year for having the police department. This is just another view of comparison, looking at the levies and how they've changed. There's a few different lines on here. That one that really goes up and down is the actual levy amounts. The one that with the dots that's increasing shows you the tax rate changes over the years. No, that's the levy. The increase is the one with the square, the rate is the one with the squares. And ideally, what we'd like to see is that line that's going all the way up and down would stay flat as that other line for the tax rate, or the tax rate we would like to see stay flat as the levy increases a little bit each year. And that would mean that we're growing fast enough to absorb any increases. So you can see that that tax rate has actually bounced all over throughout the years. Right now, if we can, based on where we're at, we're bringing that back down, and it gets a little close to being flat to where we were in 2013 and 2014. So over the last 10 years, we've grown enough to absorb the increases that we've had with the city, but during that period of time, not so much. This is what we're using some of those capital funds for, where I alluded to earlier, where we set money aside to save for those things. The fire department has a couple of purchases planned. One is $63,000 to replace one of the trucks, and then $54,000 for some fire rescue tools. And you'll see I've made some changes. The initial slides I sent out, found out I had some typos in there. And then the library plans to use a portion of their fund balance too for various things like their carpeting and some furniture and some security upgrades. Now this gets into more specific, what are some of the items that are in that budget. You can see here we've got Christmas decorations, bus route, and that amount for the bus route will change depending on ridership next year. When we start collecting, we'll get a portion of that revenue that the county collects with the route. So that will bring that number down a little bit, but it's hard to know at this point what that impact will be. We put in $50,000 for a strategic plan, so that's building on the comp plan that isn't going in place this year, and it budgets to start that strategic plan partway through the year. That $50,000 will cover about half of it. So in 2024, we'd have to budget for that remaining amount. There's a e-permit program that engineering is proposing to get for building permits and some of their other daily business. The body cameras are going to need some maintenance, so the police department have done some research and found this contract in which the cameras will be maintained and replaced by another company. So that's actually an ongoing amount. So that $69,000 would be an annual amount going forward. The rec center needs their parking lot sealed, so that's about $55,000. We'll have to buy 2 new police vehicles. That's about $120,000, and that includes outfitting the vehicles once we get them. And then we also, at this point in time, still in that 10.25% increase, we have 2 leaf vacuum trucks in there. And then the other half of the screen there shows you the sinking funds in detail and where that $915,000 would be saved and dedicated to in the future. In the past, this is some of the numbers that we've cut. In 2022, the city facilities and the fire truck are getting 195,000. If we stay that low forever, we won't be able to maintain those facilities going forward. We'll use too much of that money and it won't be there in the future. This has been one of the hot topics this year. This is the outside organizations that have requested funds, as well as some of the city boards and commissions that get budgeted through here as well. So this will be a discussion point at one point, talking about what we're willing to give this year. And then we've talked about in the future changing that process a little bit, and we'll look next year for you to maybe set a lump sum, and then we'll have to distribute that amount amongst the ones that do apply for it next year. But that's a discussion to have next year as we start the budget process. There's a couple of new ones on here this year, of course, as you know. CAST is requesting $15,000 this year, and the Historical Society is requesting $40,000. And we have confirmed with our city attorney after the Historical Society did some research that we can give that $40,000. We don't have to, obviously, but we would be legally able to give that $40,000 if that's what you decide. This screen kind of gives you an impact, or shows you how this current levy amount would impact different levels of homeowners. As I said before, the tax capacity increased more than 16% this year, meaning the values of property in town increased quite a bit. So even with the large increase in the tax levy, our tax rate would drop to just under 78%, which is one of the lowest levels we've been at since 2013, 2014. And this was a document that went out to the counselors last week, I believe, in regards to the leaf vacuum trucks and what some of the options might be there and how they would impact the taxpayers. So you can see what the two leaf vacuums do, what would happen if we would save for one in 23 and then purchase two in 24. So it would be a smaller impact this year. And then the third option there was to obviously not put any leaf vacuums in. So I believe that is all the information I have, so we can open it up to questions and discussion.
I think first I'll open up to see if the counselors have questions, then we'll go to the general public. So I'll start off with one of my questions. On the bus revenue, we had talked about the potential of veterans getting to ride the bus for free, but I guess I've never heard anything more on that topic. Do you?
I have no idea.
I don't know if that's the county going to be setting that policy?
No, that would come from us, and I don't think that's been addressed in any capacity.
Yeah, and so I think we maybe need to get that, and unfortunately, you and Joe are the only two here for city staff, but can you see if that gets on our agenda? Because I think those fees are supposed to be $1 a ride starting
$1 a
the
ride.
first. And I haven't heard anything about,
Mr. Vice Chair, Councilors,
Yeah.
at the Transportation Advisory meetings, we have not discussed that, that's never really been a topic on our agenda for
No.
the meetings.
it's been on our, not agenda item, but it's been a discussion item with us, because I talked about it.
Maybe at the council level, but the committee has not discussed it at any of the Transportation
So
Advisory
right now,
meetings.
you're assuming it's going to be everybody.
Yeah.
That's
yep,
correct.
Yep.
Okay. So I think I'd like to see that on the agenda, because a lot of cities don't charge the vets. So at least I'd like to have some discussion on that.
I could agree with that, but
Do they show a?
yeah, how do
I don't know how
you
the
prove
counties-
your verification?
Yeah.
That
You go with your
card, or-
DD 214?
No, I don't think.
I mean,
that was
I get it, but
Yeah.
yeah, that'd be the hard part.
I don't know. I just can't see that many people lying about a veteran status, especially if it's in front of other people on the bus.
I get you.
Somebody's going to know something. So hopefully that wouldn't be the happen, but, so yeah, I don't know if we only got a meeting left before the end of the year. I'd like to have some
We have a meeting.
say in that.
We have a meeting next Wednesday.
Okay. Okay.
Would
And I
that
know,
be-
like I said, I know there's a lot of cities that do it, not all of them, but I don't know how that would affect your numbers, Nicole. That's why I'm bringing that up.
It wouldn't change because
It
I
wouldn't
could,
hurt.
I mean, that $25,000 is our expense for the year. That expense will be reduced depending on the revenue that we
What the
receive.
revenue is that we make, okay. Okay, thank you. That was my one particular question, and I want to talk about the leaf vacuum thing, but I can wait a little bit, to see if other people have comments first.
One very minor question I have on the, I don't know if it'd be considered in the other outside organizations, but is there anything set aside for downtown flowers?
There is $1,200 in the budget right now.
Is there? I just didn't see
Yes.
that line
Yep.
itemed out. Okay. Okay.
Would that be the first time we're contributing to the
Yes.
flowers, if I'm
Yes.
understanding?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Mayor?
Do we, speaking of the flowers, do we compensate or how do we run the watering program? Is that solely
The chamber
volunteers?
takes care of all that, yeah, and it's all volunteer.
All volunteers so far.
And the mayor's contingency fund pays for a party in typically January or February for the plant waterers.
Okay.
Because they get up awful early in the morning, usually.
In July, yeah. Not in September, it's too dark yet.
Okay, any other comments from the council?
I'm not
Board?
done.
You're not there yet?
No.
Dave's ready.
I got a question with you probably can't back up to the sheet. You know, we got this budgeted items, the library is using fund balance, correct? Mm-hmm. All right, and I had brought this up at another meeting. Tom, don't get me wrong, with the park department, I know we do have a fairly healthy fund balance. I had asked that about, we're actually budgeting that expenditure for the seal coating of 55,000. Right? All right, 0.63. And then the rec center equipment over here, the 290 contribution, how does that fit in with the rec center equipment? It's not in there, any other budget or whatnot. I'm a little confused on that one.
So for 2022, when we started that fund, it actually came out of Park and Rec's fund balance. We put 25,000 from there into this sinking fund to start with. Now, at this point, it's in the tax levy. That $25,000 will come from the taxpayers.
Every year?
Yes.
All right, I found it odd that
It's to
one we're
help
using
replace-
fund balance and one we're doing.
Yeah, the reason we started it is because when we opened the new rec center, obviously we ended up with mostly new fitness equipment.
Oh, I understand
The
that.
problem being that all of a sudden it's all going to need to be replaced at one time. So this was there to help.
As I said, I'm just always questioning it with that park budget. I mean, a healthy fund balance and let's budget some more. I just want to bring that to councilors' attention. And I do have another one. I realize we do have to do something with Herman the German. And I know this year we're going to do the 1.14 on the levy impact, the 100,000. Do we got to get serious on, this could be a $10 million project. I mean, this $100,000 that we're going to do something.
And we did 100 last year.
Yeah,
It
I
doesn't
mean,
go
I
anywhere.
believe the building official will agree. Do we have to look at it? That won't even pay an architect to come look at it. What has to be done? I mean, at that amount, 30 years from now, we'll have the money? 40 years?
Well, I know there's concern, or the ability to write grants is supposed to be, right, Tom, in the first couple of years, is looking at any grants we can find, and
Vice President Schultz and Councilors Tom Schmitz, Park and Recreation Department. In 2023, we plan to work with the state of Minnesota to develop a concept plan for deconstruction, creating architecturally historic blueprints, and then reconstruct it. So phase one, hopefully we can complete in '23, is this, get a concept agreement with the State Historical Society. And then from there, we will put funds together and go for grants to hire historical architects and engineers to create the plan, 24, 25.
you talked about a 10-year plan before this will be done, correct? Was it
Yes, I mean, we're hoping to complete it, well before a decade from now. But we've got to take one step at a time and work significantly with the State Historical Society because we are going to need state funding, possibly federal assistance on this. Both our state senator and representative have gone on record to support a bonding bill when we're ready. But we're a good 2-3 years out from being ready to actually bid this job out.
And I know you gave that report to us. It's just
Deconstruction.
looking
I
at
feel
that
really
one.
confident that we have such a unique situation here that we're going to get hopefully some pretty substantial state and federal funds. Let's hope.
So first of all, it's that concept.
Especially right now when they got
agreement.
how many billion sitting up there at state capitol?
Good luck.
One other item I wanted to comment on, I believe it's gonna happen next year. Police vehicles, after this round, will go into that equipment revolving and they won't have to come to us anymore.
If we go that route of moving them to that equipment revolving, it will
No,
be.
I realize it goes up,
Yeah,
but
it will be several years before they're all in there. So it'd be 2 vehicles a year that would still have to come in the tax levy in order to cover that initial purchase. And then the equipment revolving would cover their
but we are gonna
maintenance
start
and
that next
replacement as
year?
we move forward. We've talked about it, yeah. We
I
haven't,
mean, we talked about it
Yeah.
last year and nothing happened. Police department has to come to us every year, the 2 vehicles.
well, last year, I mean, for 2022, we used DUI funds to buy some of those vehicles. We haven't, it hasn't been all in the tax levy for the last 2 years, I believe.
I'd like to see that get in there, we absorb it, we go through, I realize you gotta put money in,
Just
not
part of our-
120 a year, it's whatever X amount is they have to put in for vehicle.
Part of our cost of
replacement.
doing business, is what you're saying, yeah.
Right.
Question, comment?
Eligible building official, getting back to Herman on the funding.
Yeah.
I know you're talking about grants and stuff, and Tom's talking about the, getting the federal and the state in there. On the grant thing, though, if we get into the grants, we get into cycles. And we could go a year or two not getting any grants. That's where the money from the city is gonna be, needed
Very good
to,
point. Yep.
if we're gonna do this project, get it all done at once, or majority of it done at once. If we do get grants, we gotta follow that cycle, and we probably miss a cycle on the next grant application, so it's gonna be 2 years in between doing stuff, so.
Well, it'd be interesting to see too if the Herman Monument Society is are they going to step up and do some massive fundraising or not? We need to have some conversations with them too, so we're all working together.
Right.
So yeah, maybe we should have them invited to a work session or something so we can,
Well, they didn't
Talk about-
attend, we've been funding them, they didn't attend our.
they didn't attend our meeting, which, that
you
makes
know,
me
so
nervous,
we-
yeah.
You know, they had the opportunity,
Yeah.
and again, they just assume we're gonna just contribute.
At least that's our assumption when you don't show up and you're requesting money. We had four groups or
But
five
we
groups?
raised it
To the human rights, and they messed up the day. They came the next day and nobody was here. And then, I think the battery had some confusion too about when they needed to be here.
And that was
Yeah.
my next one was,
Yep.
hopefully this is the last year with the battery. We should have enough in the, no?
Come on.
What, 100 and,
We'll be at 75 at the end of 22, and then we have 50,000 in the budget for next year. So there'll be 125 there in 23.
yeah, some of the preliminaries are in the high
And
twos.
inflation just threw us
High
out.
twos, low threes for what we're looking at,
all right.
so. We're still working on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I should point out too, we have money here to start a blight fund as part of those sinking funds, so that any future things that we have to do to help take care of some of those properties that are falling apart or whatever wouldn't have to come out of the
And we're
general
putting in
fund balance.
25,000 for that.
Yeah, so
Starting
proposing
something.
25,000 a year, or at least starting there.
Okay. Other questions or comments from counselors? Then maybe I will talk a little bit about the leaf vacuum system just for a little bit. And for those that haven't heard about this, I was getting approached a lot by constituents to request a leaf vacuum system for our city. And in doing my research, I found out that we were one of the only cities our size that didn't have one. And really, it's a pretty simple program. It's basically rake your leaves to either to the boulevard or into the street, and a leaf vacuum system comes along and takes them away. And it's one of the things that many, many cities love about one of the services they have in their community. It keeps leaves out of the sewer system. It extends the life of the current street sweepers that we currently have. And people, the other cities our size have had them have had this system for 10 years. And we're kind of behind the game here a little bit. We have a beautiful city with lots of trees and lots of leaves. So I would really like to see our city provide this service to our citizens. I'll go on record that I have no trees in my yard, in my front yard. So I want to make sure that's clear. But I do think that every group that I talk to, people are, yes, we will pay more in taxes to have this service, we want it. I've had very few negative people that have said, no, we don't want it. So I would like to try and see, we have some different options in front of us here. We could potentially we need really two to run our city. Most of the cities around us have two. Apparently a few have, or there's one city that's got a few more, but 2 would basically get us to have 3 rounds in our city in the fall. So not just once, you'd actually have 2 or 3 times to get your leaves out to because leaves do drop at different times and some do a different variety of leaves. And I know Jeff had some questions, and he's done a little bit more research since then. I think Nicole's got some comments from Jeff. You want to talk about that?
Some of the concerns that the street department have, they're worried that 2 trucks aren't enough, that they would need at least 3 in order to get going, especially if you have problems with one, then one breaks down and then you're stuck with 1 truck, and then how do you maintain that route that you've set up? They're worried about the storage. Right now, we don't have space to store those trucks year-round. And they would prefer not to store them outside because that would affect the life of the equipment as well. The street sweeper, he says, will still have to run behind each of them. We wouldn't just not be able to do the street sweeper. And the last concern that he gave me was they're worried about traffic on Broadway and how the slow-moving trucks would affect that traffic.
I did, our city manager's not here tonight, but when I talked with him right before he left for his training, he did say that, if he's supportive now, and he would support if the city council decides to go forward, he would support that decision. So, that's kind of where we're at. And we know we could buy 1, we could put money away to buy 2, or put some money away this year to buy 2 next year. We could not do it at all. I just think it's a service. Even a meeting that I was with today, the people got excited about it. They were just like, wow, you mean that's all we'd have to do? We don't have to bag our leaves? And some of those streets that we have are pretty littered with trees. And I think those homeowners would be crazy happy about it. But I'm going to leave it there. I will support what the council decides to do. But I think from here, council members want to join in on this topic and then go to the public?
Because
Go ahead.
I was surprised myself at the people I brought this up to, once it hit the papers and whatnot, doing the support that was for it. I mean, on one hand, you're an elected official, okay, the people would like to see this, and on the other hand, fiscally responsible. I was shocked when I told them, here's the initial hit, what it's gonna cost, and yes, there's gonna be maintenance and whatnot, so it's going back and forth, and I heard it from also numerous people on the street. All these other cities have it, how come New Ulm doesn't have it? I mean, I know there's never a good year to lay out
Right.
$260,000. There's never a good year. I was just overwhelmed at the support for it. I thought for sure in New Ulm I would hear, absolutely not, no, don't spend that money. It was the other way. I was surprised to hear that.
I'm right there with you, Councilor Christian, that, yeah, any person I talk to, bring it up. I mean, even in a negative connotation, because I wasn't supportive originally. I didn't think this was the proper year to spend extra money, but any person I talk to is in favor of it, and I would be there with them as a rep.
I've had emails with both, in favor and not in favor, but, I think we have to take a strong look at it and say, is this a want or is it a need? We just got done talking about Herman, and is that enough money? I'd rather put 200,000 more into the budget to Herman because that's something we already own. And one thing we don't have outlined here is we don't have a budget for Jeff to operate that equipment. Is that going to cost him $50,000 more? Does he have the manpower to maintain that? Then we have the storage issue, and we're talking about adding on, for the battery and those numbers for a storage building, and that's up too on the inflation. And
Yeah, and I think every single year you can come up with a reason why we shouldn't do it, and that's kind of what we've been doing because I think this was brought up 10 years ago originally, and imagine if we would have bought them then, the price we would have paid then versus now. Or the same thing, if we let's put it off for another 5 or 10 years, and then how much more we'd have to pay for it at that point. So, I mean, those are things that we have to wrestle and decide where do we best go with it, but.
I remember early on, Mr. Hoffman stating, like talking to the city of Mankato or Hutchinson, that you have to educate your community. You can't just put any sticks out there, you plug it up, or pumpkins, or just, the things, you stated the street, and you're talking, you can't put leaves in the street technically, because it's in our ordinances, it's a lot of details, I think.
Sure. Yep.
There are costs to operating the program that, at this point, they're hard to even estimate.
Yeah, and Jeff said he was gonna need how many other trucks behind it, you know, that we'd have to rent equipment yet to run the program, and I'm not comfortable going into it like that.
Well, and I think you have to look at as well, there's all different ways to operate this system, and other cities have figured it out and know how to do it and are more than willing to help us get up and running. You know, if we approve this, you know, they have pretty much the whole year, because we got to wait till fall before they can pick up any leaves, so they can work out the system. And you have different ways that different cities have done it. North Mankato has one person doing it, just one person. One city staff person driving it. So in other cities do it a little differently. So I think I'm very confident in Jeff and our street department to figure out a way to best make this operate. He mentioned maybe using a compost site on the south side of town. You know, and we do have that one small one by the dog park where there's a little bit of leaves and sifted dirt down there. So there's some options there. And Jeff and his crew are so good, I think they'd figure out a way to make this work to the benefit of our citizens. So hopefully we don't dog it down and just come up with reasons why we can't, and instead maybe look for ways that we can make this work, whether it's this year or maybe next year. So, other comments?
Adding on a little, I did get to speak with the street commissioner. He apologized that he could not be here tonight to answer those questions. He will be at our next one, but he could not be here tonight.
Okay. Anything else? Then let's go to the public. If anybody here wants to talk about any particular issue, or we have department heads here, any comments from them on their budget or their overall issues? So the floor is open.
Mr. Vice Chair and councilors,
Yes.
Director Jorgensen went through some of the items that were added, and one of those items was that $70,000 for a traffic study. Just wanted the council to be aware that I've been in discussions with MnDOT about performing a traffic study. Initially started as kind of the south end from Center Street to 20th South Street, looking at the corridor, trying to find ways to improve pedestrian safety and just general safety of the corridor. That's now expanded to include 20th South all the way out to Garden Street. Specifically, we'll be looking at intersections of 12th North, 5th North, the 4th South area, and 16th South. So that's what that's for. Study would be done in conjunction with MnDOT. MnDOT would lead the study, and it would be a 50-50 cost share. So that's what that amount is, if you were wondering what that was for.
So did we get those results this year in 2023?
MnDOT's still looking for their portion of the funding. So this study, it's probably a quite extensive study, so it's going to take some time. So I would imagine results 24, 25 probably. But then our hope is with the study, then that would open up multiple different grant streams, revenue streams for us to perform suggested improvements in the corridor at that time. So there's LPP funds, there's transportation alternative funds, but having the study is kind of our first step to see what's warranted and what treatments would work. So.
I'll pass it out again to folks in the audience. The new mayor want any extra money in her budget for next year? Or?
You would.
Well, great. I'll ask one more time. So usually we ask 3 times. Yeah, come on up. Come up to the podium. I'm glad that we have some spectators today. Usually we don't get many. So just tell us your name and your address and.
Hi, I'm Barb Nelson. I live at 3 Hazelwood Avenue.
Okay.
And it said about your taxes, if we should be
Yeah.
here. Well, I am questioning, I'm sorry, good evening. And anyways, I'm questioning that my taxes has gone up and my market value went up. And what I'm questioning about is that I've stocked a lot of money in it because of the damage that I had from the city water. And now I'm paying extra money for that, plus I'm getting my property fixed up, and it's costing me a lot of money. It has already. And I still have damage in my driveway, my yard, and my lawn, and all around my house, all that's all sunk up because I pumped city water through my sub pump for like 5 years. And it was groundwater, they said. It was not groundwater, it was city water, because I seen the crack out in the street. And then they dug it up, and it was just explode, and this water was all over the place, and then everything started sinking, and around my house, and that's what I'm trying to get fixed up, which I already have, and I did pay way back mud jacking, but that we had to knock out the whole floor, all the windows. My windows didn't slide anymore. I have lips in my sidewalk. I got that fixed, but I have a lot of damage that has to be fixed yet, and that's why I'm here. And I don't believe my stuff. I should be paying more on this. And I did get. And I was at a meeting, and they had said I would get reimbursed for that electricity that I had. For all that, they even run it off that time. I never got anything. And now my taxes are going up, and I've paid a lot of money out, and I'm still have to pay more money out.
Sounds like you're pretty frustrated.
You bet that it is, and it's
So
real.
did you work with the Public Utilities Commission on this?
I did though that time.
And how did that
You
go?
don't wanna know
You
what.
want me to go there? Okay.
You want to go there? Do you want to hear what this person said he came to a meeting and he said that they had checked that for leaks every year or whatever. And that's not true, because when I went over to the Third North, and they knew I was coming because I went over to First North first, and I went there, and the first guy said, he don't want to talk to you, made face. And the other guy said, it's 3:30 and we close at 4. That's what I got for him.
So
I was
how long
done.
ago was this?
Oh,
was this?
it's past, about 5 years ago.
Okay.
Or I pumped it like 5 years ago, and it was, I don't remember, I was to the point where I couldn't do anymore. It had me so shook up, I was done.
So you still have
But
concerns?
now I don't believe that my taxes should be going up when I have all this expense that I've paid, and I am gonna pay yet.
Yeah.
I understand your frustration with that part, but technically or legally this evening, that part wouldn't have nothing to do with this meeting. Your market value.
Wasn't here, I'm supposed to be here tonight.
No, but I mean, those other items, we really can't
Right,
comment on.
I agree, but I'm
Right.
just saying why I don't think my taxes should be going
Yes,
up.
and you have every right to come here and say that.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, but the other items, we can't really discuss or talk or,
Dan?
right.
I understand.
You have every right to say that
Okay,
taxes are too high.
thank you.
Yep. I appreciate you coming, because we
Okay.
need to hear from people.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
Yes, thank you. Anybody else who'd like to speak? Okay. Hearing nothing else, I would entertain a motion to close, let me just get the wording for this again. Entertain a motion to close the public hearing and approve, and we want to do this whole thing, right, on here, or do we wait for that? We just close the public hearing and,
And approve any adjustments or whatever, but, yeah, so whatever's there, you can go ahead and read that
okay,
motion.
so
that's
I would
fine.
entertain a motion to close the public hearing and approve revenue and expenditure adjustments as presented in the preliminary 2023 budget and allow staff flexibility and further minor changes as needed, arriving at the final individual 2023 budget numbers at our next official meeting. You could just so move that.
So move.
Do we have a second? Do we have a status? Larry, did you second? I second. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries. So our meeting now concludes, and we will wrap up the budget meeting at the next official meeting in 2 weeks. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. Thank you, department heads, for being here. And Mayor to be, thank you for coming as well. Good night.